Good evening, everybody. It is the Global Star Party, back again with an Australian Southern Hemisphere clear, moonless night, which is lovely. We do have a couple of live views for you, and then we'll go through the Flickr group, and there's a bunch of great stuff that's been submitted there, so thanks for participating. And we should have a live view from Kevin Franklin. This looks like Mars.
Yeah, good evening everyone. Yep, that is indeed Mars, showing off some of its more famous surface features for us. If I can just get it to sit still for a moment.
You were saying that the seeing was quite good earlier in the evening.
Yeah, I'll be posting a few images from earlier on, but you can just make out some of the detail there. The Syrtis Major region just dipping off to the lower left there as the planet rotates from my, or should I say our position, with north down. We've got rotation going from right to left. So the Syrtis Major is just disappearing around the limb there. And right in the middle, or not actually nearly in the middle, is the meridian. And so that darker feature towards the top of the screen is the Meridiani planum, which is where Schiaparelli, or close to where Schiaparelli crater is.
Okay. Very cool. I mean, that looks very clear to me.
Now, if I just need to get this thing to auto guide, would be, there we go. Sorry about the red cross, but now it'll sit still for us. So this is through a red filter, a red imaging filter. So that shows off those darker regions quite well.
Yeah. When I focus, I'm not using a button of mask or anything, so I'm just manually like twiddling the knobs and looking at those surface features, and it's a bit of an art. You sort of start to blur your eyes and try and see through the shimmer to identify some hard edges. Do you have any tricks other than the button of mask when you're focusing?
I usually focus. My red, green, and blue filters are pretty well isofocal and parfocal, as the saying goes. But so I focus on the red because the red's the one that is least interfered with by. Oh, gee, what happened there? Least interfered with by atmospheric turbulence, and so if I usually do it visually. And on a night where I can't tell if I'm focused or not, which happens, that's usually a result of the bad seeing. And if you can't tell that you're focused, you probably ought not be out doing planetary imaging. Pack up and go back inside where it's warm.
Yeah.
But early on this evening, it was very good conditions. I mean, these are good conditions now by most standards, but earlier on, it was really sitting still beautifully for me.
Wow.
But it is getting smaller.
Yeah, it's not up as high right now. Is that right?
It's actually pretty good. The trouble is it gets over into the west there and over the land mass where there's a bit more heat rising.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like there's any heat rising right now.
Oh, tell me about it. At least you're inside nice and warm. I'm sitting out here by the swimming pool. It's, I know I'll get no sympathy from some of our compatriots, but it's dipped below 10 degrees out here, and that is just ridiculous. That's 10 degrees Celsius. I know. I get no sympathy from you, Paul.
Yeah, that's what it's like up here. Drops down to 12, and you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna have to put like long pants on instead of shorts.
I've got a jumper on. So that's through the red filter. I can flick it across to the blue filter. You can actually see some of the detail from the clouds, especially over the northern region.
Blue is the filter that is the hardest to get clear. It's notorious for just feeling a bit blurrier than the others. We had a discussion on this recently, and I think it's to do with the way blue is scattered in our atmosphere.
Yeah, that rally scattering. So you can see at the top of the image, you can just make out some white. Hang on, let's get focused a bit better. Make out a white patch at the top there. Just
Yep.
top and just off to the left, and then lower down at the bottom and to the right, where the North Polar region is, there's some clouds over there. You can't actually see the polar caps at the moment; they're covered with cloud.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see it compared to the red one. Gee, see what I've got to deal with. Oh, that's the camera cord's tugging on it. Okay, now I lost him completely.
That's all right. What I might do is switch over to me for a second while I've got this live view before it disappears on me. Even though I've got a dome here, the way the dome's designed, when you're looking straight upwards, the half of the dome roof interferes with your view. And this target's just swinging over to the apex now. So it's going to hit the roof of the dome, and I won't be able to swing it around. No matter which way I go, it'll still be blocking half of it off. So this is straight off the camera sensor about 30 seconds ago, and this is the War and Peace Nebula. I'll just get this in the middle here. It's a bit better. This is in nebulosity, so the stretch here is pretty ordinary. You just stretch in the black point and the white point, and it gives you a very raw look at the nebula. But we should be able to zoom in here a little bit and see some of that detail. It's a bit of a faint one. This is 3 minutes on the hyperstar, which is more than enough for most of the big targets. But this one's not diminutive, but it is a little bit faint. But what I can do is flick over to a processed view. Give me a sec. Well, not processed, but a stretch in PixInsight, which is just a lot better. So give me 2 seconds here.
Do you know why it's called the War and Peace Nebula?
I think it's something to do with a skull and a dove that is visible at certain wavelengths. I certainly don't see them at in RGB in the visual, but I have seen some HA and some other views that that definitely show the skull. I can't really quite make out the dove. It's a bit interpretive, I guess.
It's often a story behind how they come up with these names.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a funny thing, these naming rights on nebulas, because they're really common usage. It really just depends on what people refer to them as. They're not governed by any body. They're not official, unlike their catalogue names. But people just take a name and they start running with it, and you get names like the Running Man, which are quite new, quite recent, but just people have started to refer to them like that. So yeah, this is a PixInsight stretch, and if I turn off the stretch, you can see that's what the frame looks like with no stretching at all. It's all linear data. So you hit that auto stretch and it comes out quite nicely. I also tend to run a background neutralization, a color calibration, and an SCNR to get rid of the green cast on things, and that pulls it out pretty well. The hyperstar tends to, because it's exposing so quickly, the stars blow out quickly. So I know these stars are blue, and I can see the blue tinge around them, but they tend to bloat really quite quickly with the hyperstar. So I'll go in later when I stack all this and get rid of all that noise and reduce the stars a bit as well. But I just don't have great success with star color. It is there. You can definitely differentiate the oranges and the blues, but I probably need a little more work on my star color workflow.
I think if you just do it visually as best you can, and if you've got a well-calibrated screen, you just got to hope that it looks the same on everyone else's computer.
Yeah, the PixInsight background neutralization, color calibration, SCNR steps that I do really do neutralize it quite well, which is good. Once it gets rid of that green, and I can see the natural colors of the red, that kind of salmon red of the emission nebula, it's really even. And even the background here, you can see it kind of matches the grey background of PixInsight itself, and that's a good sign that the rest of the color is fairly natural. We have a guy at our local club who is colorblind, and he often comes in with his pictures of Orion Nebula and stuff, and they're completely orange or something. And I feel bad for the guy, but I'm hoping to show him this process soon so that he can rely on just the software working it out for him, what those natural colors are.
And of course, no one has the heart to tell him, right?
How are you going there with your live view, Kev? I've got another image here if you're not quite there.
Not quite there. I'm just contorting myself to try to get Saturn on the screen. Well, it's right overhead, and I haven't got a diagonal on, so
okay.
I've got to get into some very weird shapes to see in the viewfinder.
This is the other one that I got earlier tonight. Not great. It's only 30 minutes worth of data just before the show started. And I got this high-flying satellite going through, which doesn't help. And I haven't really, because I'm not using flats, and I've used a automatic flattening, it's given a bit of a round sort of appearance to the background, which isn't real, unfortunately. So there's a bit of cleanup to do. It's really straight off the sensor, as I've been saying. Normally I would go into Photoshop and stretch the black point so it's a little bit darker, and push the white point so the colors are a little bit brighter. But straight off the sensor, this is kind of how it looks. I've got a bit of a halo there around that star. Again, that's the hyperstar and the internal mirror reflecting. I can even see my cables coming off the side of that starburst, those diffraction spikes. And a little bit of internal reflection up here, which gives this green's triangular spodge. So all stuff I've got to clean up.
Yeah, that's hard stuff to fix in post as well.
Yeah, that one particularly, yeah. All these splotches around the corner here are just stuff that would get removed with proper flats. Yeah. And so this is, I didn't even tell you what it was. This is Alniat, which is part of that very colourful region near Scorpio, the Rho Ophiuchus, I can never pronounce it, Ophiuchus region. Brilliant region to look at and photograph at all different fields of view. This is fairly wide at 540, but it's got some detailed nebula right in the middle there that you can get with a longer focal length. You can zoom right back with a 200mm lens and just a non-telescope astrophotography and get the whole region quite beautifully and looking like any other Hubble-style deep space photo you get. And then you can go right back and just take Milky Way shots, wide Milky Way shots, and see the region quite prominently. We'll see a few of those in the Flickr gallery later. It's just a fantastic part of the sky.
Saying before the show, you get option paralysis there. You don't know how many different nebulae. There's so many emission nebulae there. Just around that region, Eagle and the Omega and the Triffid and Lagoon, and just places just flush with them.
Hmm. It's all in prime position right now too. So we've had a really good run with the weather, Kevin and I, this week.
Oh, it's been great. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Cold
I'm
and clear.
really sleep deprived.
So
Okay, so
I've
Kevin's got us some live Saturn.
got Saturn on the screen there. Just minimise that down. So yeah, that's nice and sharp there. That's through a luminance filter. So no red, no green. I mean, Saturn's relatively featureless. It's only after a lot of post-processing and getting the gamma and the contrast right that you can pull out the bands on the planet's surface.
Hmm. Because of that lack of surface detail, do you tend to run really long video runs for each channel?
Yeah. The luminance run, I do 10,000 frames at about 50 frames a second. So I just let it go and just get as many frames, just for the noise, just to try to get as little noise as possible. So I stack about 30% of 10,000 frames for the luminance, and 2 minutes each for the color channels.
Yep.
And so with Jupiter, you need to be much more circumspect. Jupiter, 60 seconds is about as long as any one take can go for. With Mars, because it moves a bit slow, I usually do 90 seconds. And because it's very bright, you get 90 seconds at about 100 frames a second on my camera.
Okay.
For Mars. So Mars is pretty good, and Saturn's quite forgiving because there's so few surface features to blur, even though it does rotate fairly quickly.
I'm just going to try and reposition my telescope in the background here. I think it's just hitting the dome now.
Oops.
The view is hitting the dome. So I'm going to see if I can swing it around to something else a bit lower. I'll leave your lovely view of Saturn up.
So one of those emission nebulae down Sagittarius way.
I think I'll try going to the Eagle Nebula.
Perennial favourite.
I just worked out a really handy trick with my gear. With an equatorial mount, you've got the weights on one end and the telescope on the other end, and depending on where you're looking at in the sky, your telescope wants to flip one way or the other. They call it the meridian flip, and that's done to keep the telescope above the weights and to stop it from hitting the tripod if it goes too far in any direction. You don't want your camera gear or any of the other stuff hanging off the top of the tube to hit the tripod legs or anything like that. So it forces this meridian flip. But I've found, because I'm in the dome and I'm trying to get low, that there's often times where I want the scope to be the other way around. I want the weights to be up in the air, and I want the scope to be really down, upside down and looking up, and that helps get through a few of the obstacles in my observatory, which is great.
Does it mean you don't have to do the flip?
It does, actually, because if you start to run with the whole thing upside down, then it doesn't have to flip halfway through as it crosses the meridian. It just keeps going. Excuse me. Right. Do you have that photo of Mars that you recently took, Kevin?
Which one?
I think it might be. I think you might have set it as your profile picture, or
That one.
sent it to the Flickr just recently.
Actually, I never posted it to Flickr. That is a shame.
Mhm.
I can get it up for you. That's easy.
It was also taken on a night of exceptional seeing. Yes.
Oh yes, yeah. It's as you say, we've been really lucky.
Hmm.
So that's that one.
My telescope is moving in the dome. I'm just hoping all the cables are okay and it doesn't do anything stupid without me there.
Just got to navigate around and find Picasso. So that's the one.
Very nice. You can see a lot of that cloud detail.
So yeah, I was quite happy with the. I usually don't like clouds too much, but this one they kind of worked out really well.
Mm.
There's one right over. I think that's Elysium Mons. Is the white spot just to the bottom of the left of centre,
Okay.
and just around the limit on the southern pole too. Yeah, there's quite a few clouds about that day. Quite a nice view. I was quite happy with it. Hence the reason it's now my profile photo.
Now, for anyone who is just joining us and hasn't met Kevin before, Kevin's shooting with an 8-inch telescope, which is rather modest, but he somehow, through some sorcery, manages to pull out images like this. It's just incredible. I'm still trying to catch up to you with my 9 1/4.
There's a process of trial and error. No, a lot of it's the seeing, of course. If you get good conditions, then it's easy to get good images. The seeing, making sure the focus is dead on,
Mm.
and then in the processing, the little tricks are just to get the gamma right, to try to bring out those details in the
Mm-hmm.
in the highlight areas.
It's funny because coming into astrophotography, I went straight for the nebulas, and it's such a process and a lot of work doing nebulas, and always kind of thought, the planetary stuff, it's easy, you know. All you have to do is take a video and stack it, and that's job done. It takes a couple of minutes. But then I actually tried it, and then I realised it's not really that simple. And at every step of the way, if something's not right, whether it's focus, whether it's the filters not being parfocal, whether it's collimation of your telescope, or how much your scope's out of alignment and not tracking the planet correctly, and there's just so many pitfalls. So to get an image like this, yeah, you really have to get every step right along the way.
And when you see the work of some of the big guys, those guys who are out there just doing ridiculous, the Damien Peaches of the world,
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Wesleys, and all of those guys who are basically well, I suppose Damien Peach is a professional now.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of Damien Peach and Christopher Go, who's known for his Jupiter work, I believe they're over in the States this week because of the orbital insertion of Juno. And they're actually helping to at an amateur level, but image observationally while all of this is going on. which again is something I find really good and wonderful about this hobby, is that the amateurs are so closely related to what's going on with the science, and a lot of the observations start with the amateur astrophotographer.
Well, as Juno was approaching Jupiter, they did ask for volunteers, amateurs who could image parts of Jupiter and sort of find areas that might be worthwhile Juno focusing on when it gets there, not tomorrow, but the day after.
Yep, and it's funny because NASA, if they had their way, they probably wouldn't even have a camera on board, because they don't care too much about the photos as much as the general public does.
Well,
and they do a lot of this stuff for the outreach and the promotion.
Well, that's exactly what it's for. That's the only reason there's a visible light camera on Juno, and they explicitly state that it's for outreach purposes.
Yep.
Because people expect pretty pictures to be sent back.
That's right.
That's one of the great disappointments of what the Mars orbiter they sent.
Oh yeah.
Was the last Mars orbiter Express that they sent. There were no. It was purely an atmospheric probe, and it didn't actually have any visible light imaging capabilities, and so no one knew anything about it because they've got no press.
I think that was Mars Express. I'm pretty sure that was the one measuring atmosphere stuff, and they've got a little nav cam on board, but it's literally like a 640 by 480 pixel web camera. It's really dinky, and they've started publishing the images on their Flickr page, and you can actually, if they publish them in sequence enough, you can stack a few of them and try and get something out of them. It's a certain better vantage point than we have. But yeah, it's definitely not the sort of image you're seeing coming from New Horizons or anything like that. Now I can show a live view of the Eagle Nebula. Thankfully, my telescope spun around and didn't hit anything, and seems to be working. So there is a 30-second exposure, quite wide field with the hyperstar. So I'll just zoom in here.
Gee, that stretched right out too. Just looking at your black and white sliders there.
Yeah, that's still the same stretch from the last one. It's not automatic. It's manually set.
It takes me about an hour with my setup to get anything like what you're looking at on the screen there.
Yeah. The hyperstar is so fast. I mean, that's 30 seconds. I've just done a 3-minute one, and that's just about to pop onto the screen now, so it might blow out a bit with this stretch. We'll see. They're quite large files too. They're about 85 megabytes each fit file. So they take a while to come off the CCD onto the computer. It actually stops the whole imaging process for a good minute and a half while it does this.
Yeah, there it is. Nice.
That's not bad.
That's three minutes. That's not bad for a single exposure. Well, if you dial down the stretch there and stack a few of those together, that'll look brilliant.
Yeah. In fact, while we're talking, I'll pull it over into PixInsight just to show you how different the stretch is there. It's just so much better. But in the meantime, we can probably...
So you never did quite the digital development processing in nebulosity under control?
No, I played with it.
I can't understand.
But as soon as I used the PixInsight stretch once, which was literally pushing one button, and then I was like, damn, I'm about to be $400 poorer because I can't live without the software anymore. And I joined the
Is that
cult.
what the license is worth? It is worth 400, is it?
It's
I
based
thought it
on
was
the
more than
euro,
that.
so it might be
Yeah, I think it was more
more
than
or
that in
cheaper
Aussie dollars.
depending. Yeah,
I think
but
I worked out about 800 in Aussie dollars.
yeah, it's not cheap. And you sort of, when you commit that amount of money to software, you kind of want to
Make sure you
do what you
use it.
can with it. Yeah. Okay. Might as well just keep that one snapping off. And let's see what we've got in the Flickr group, eh? Let's see. Let's put up here. Here is the group. I recognise a few of those straight away.
A few late additions this afternoon.
Very nice Saturn there. And there's even hints, I can't embiggen this unfortunately, on this, we can trick the hangout into making it bigger by making this window smaller. But there are, I'm not sure if you can see that on your screen, there are hints of the hexagon in there, which is really fantastic. That's
Well, it's really fully turned to us now. It's about the rings are about as opened as they're going to be.
Mm-hmm. And just look at the segmentation in all of those rings too.
I keep
Most images are
dreaming
lucky
of
to
seeing
get 2 or 3.
the ink gap. I'm dreaming of seeing that one day. I think the lines that you can see, or the line you can see next to the Cassini division in the A ring there is most likely a processing artifact than an actual gap in the ring.
Right. Yeah, it's funny with the stacking process. It can be so beneficial in some ways, but sometimes, especially last year, when this, and even this year, I'm seeing a lot of amateurs doing their stack, and where the planet hits the ring, it just warps, and it's not a circle anymore. It's like a little point. It's really weird. That's not a great artifact. None of that in this one.
And I mean, as you do this more and more, you learn to try and control those artifacts.
Mm-hmm. And you took a break from planetary for a moment.
Well, it was there, and I thought, well, I'll have a look at it while it's there. We've got some clear nights, and so this is with the Meade DSI, which is a terrible camera, noisy as hell, but yeah, it doesn't do a bad job with the comets. Had terrible trouble trying to process it. So you see that I've processed it to have the star trails and the alignment focused on the comet. I tried it a few ways in Deep Sky Stacker, which has a module for cometry alignment where it will do the star and the cometry alignment separately. Now I know PixInsight does it because I did have a trial version for a few months there and managed to do Comet Lovejoy a few different ways.
Oh yeah.
And the processing for comets in nebulosities, not nebulosity, in PixInsight is actually quite good, quite a robust module it's got for clearing away the stars, focusing on the comet and putting the stars back in again. So I played with that for Comet Lovejoy last year. It's well worth doing. Comets they're great critters to image because they really are a challenge to get right. And one day, there'll be a big one. And if you practice on these little ones, you're going to get the big one right.
Yeah. Except then you just pull out your mobile phone because it's that big.
Yep. We'll look forward to it one day. We're overdue for a big one.
Well, we're probably not that overdue. Northern Hemisphere is very overdue. But yeah, we've had them year on year, which has been good. Hey, Paul, if you're still awake and not frozen there in Timaru, New Zealand, can you give us a quick news update on the spotless sun?
Yeah, still spotless.
It's not much of a news update, Paul. People are saying it's the end of the world.
No, probably about the next week or so there'll be spots on it again. There's plenty on a few on the backside that are coming around.
Yeah. News.com.au published a ridiculous article quoting alleged experts saying that this diminishing sign of solar activity is the sign of the end of the world coming and the collapse of the climate, and they, as part of an illustration, they showed a picture of a HA sun like this, so imaged in hydrogen alpha, next to a picture of the visible spectrum, so just a white disk, saying and put it forward as a before and after, saying this is what the sun looked like before.
I saw that. Absolute nonsense. And they talk about there being a new ice age coming, not completely ignoring the fact that this is a cycle that goes every 12 years. Yeah. So we haven't had a little ice age every 12 years for the last 1,000 years. So we're not about to have one now. Although, sitting out here as I am, I could wonder.
Yeah, it is freezing. But yeah, that was a particularly bad case of science journalism there, news.com.au. Dave Woolstein, thanks for submitting this excellent scope selfie. Nothing like a Milky Way wide field shot that shows off your massive equipment and your lifestyle under the stars. I hope that's your profile picture on social media. What else do we have in the group here? Oh, another Pan-STARRS. Oh, this is a video which may or may not work through the hangout. Let's give it a go. I know these when we play videos via hangouts, they can kind of stutter a bit. Oh, cool. So yeah, that's the other way if you're not going to process it up.
Well, I did a GIF. Did you see the GIF that I did from the
No,
data that I? You haven't seen that one? Just give me a moment.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Wendy Clark. Now Shah's posted a bunch of stuff. So I'm not going to be able to get through everything, Shah, but I'm just going to click on this one just because I don't know what I'm looking at. It's Mars. Shining really brightly to get that exposure so that you can see NGC 5897 cluster behind. Very, very pretty. You'll see some of these, this speckly kind of stuff on the outside is an imaging technique that can be used to determine really close bodies and binary stars and close moons and things like that. And by doing long video of this speckle and watching how the speckle changes, really clever people and clever algorithms can work out whether there are any nearby bodies. Whenever I see that kind of speckly effect, I think about the fact that there is actual information in there somewhere that can be drawn out, even though it just looks quite overblown when you expose that way. What else we got here? Wilami, or I'm just calling you Will. How you going, William? 60 seconds on M81 and M82. I know William from my social media, and this is a really great first attempt. It's definitely not easy to get galaxies, they're the harder, the really harder targets. They're often smaller, fainter. So good job on that one. Joseph has identified or discovered or imaged or confirmed a bunch of supernovas, which is really, that's when you're getting beyond just astrophotography and getting into the science. And as I was saying before about amateurs really being part of the scientific community in that sense, and this is the kind of stuff that home astronomers contribute to, whether or not they're qualified. If they have the time and the patience and the effort and the energy to learn this stuff, they can contribute to the scientific body of literature. Some more excellent wide fields. Another one from William, apparently taken with his mobile phone.
Really?
Samsung Galaxy S4 zoom mounted on a simple tripod. 1 minute exposure. Yeah.
I didn't know there was anything but automatic exposures on those things.
Yeah, I know
go.
Corey was playing with one recently and having good success, and it even came with some stacking software to do star trails and things, which is interesting. So we might see more movement in that space. Tiny Moss are about to release a consumer level camera that purports to let you take photos of the Milky Way like this, but without the need for really long exposures. So it'll be interesting to see how this space evolves. Beautiful moonshot there from Mark Redwell. And some more wide field. Of course, these classic 180-degree shots of the Milky Way where you can see the arch are really, really great and really difficult to stitch up. And you have to massage them into into shape a lot of the time because you're trying to get the floor completely flat and the sky coming over as an arch, and it's a real trick to make sure you're not pushing and pulling the Milky Way too much to distort some stars over others. That's quite a nice even job. Some more supernova. The prolific Paul Stewart and his continual documentation of the sun. I'm sure future generations will be able to go through the archives. Calcae?
The Calcae, is the purple colour in the Calcae a convention, or is that just something that you like in an aesthetic sense?
Sort of a convention between us images, yeah. It's just because it's just down that end of the spectrum, really.
Oh, so it is around that sort of colour.
Yeah, I think so.
393 nanometers down the bluey end.
Oh, it's quite short. Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, I really want a solar telescope, and in typical fashion, by the time I'm able to afford it, the sun will be going into its cycle of inactivity.
You got plenty of time to save up for the next solar maximum.
Matthias, this is fantastic. This is a really top class galaxy image. I love the black point. I love the dynamic range in between the brightest part of the core to the arms. The stars aren't bloated. There's heaps of detail in the dust lane. That is really, really good. On only 1.7 hours, which appeals to me. I love that sort of imaging. To pull out something like this in 1.7 hours is fantastic. Anyone who knows or follows me on the socials know that I I usually don't spend more than an hour or two on any image. I know people spend days and months collecting data, which is fine, but space is very, very big and there's a lot to look at. More from Shah. Devon Boggs has got a Jupiter there with a shadow transit. And I think we're getting into older photos now, which might be overlapping with stuff we've already covered. Terence. Hey, Terence, how are you? Terence has just started with astrophotography, and he's doing quite well. For one of his very early attempts at Saturn, this is fantastic. It's certainly better than anything I was doing the first year I had my telescope. So well done. Terence has very, very similar equipment to me. An Edge HD 9¼ with a EQ6 mount, ZWO camera. All right, so I will quickly...
I'm screen sharing that GIF that I put together from the data that I used to make the image that I posted.
That's great. You can see how the noise comes out of it when you stack, but...
yeah. That's not...
Something nice about seeing it move over there.
That's their 30-second sub, so they're stretched out pretty bad to a lot of noise. But just to see the movement there, yeah.
Yeah. they're so fast.
Oh no, they got a lot of love on Google+.
Yeah, good.
The GIFs always tend to.
Yeah, it's funny that Facebook still doesn't natively support GIF. But, it's the oldest form of internet media type, and I love GIFs.
They don't allow it at all.
They allow it if you host it on another server and then link that to them, and then they hit you with a play button, so it doesn't even start playing on the screen until you hit it. So it's a really, it's not a great solution. But let me see if I can show you the Eagle Nebula that I got before. I'll just switch screens. So back over in PixInsight, I have a feeling that you guys can't see the tools. You can only see the actual image itself. So let me see if I can share my desktop instead. Can you see my full PixInsight screen now?
Yes. Yes. No, so I was muted.
You're right. So this is how the fit comes in. Normally I would just hit the auto stretch, but because I know my process, before I even do that, I just drag the background neutralization on, which will change it from all green, weird cast colors to a proper black background. Then I drag color calibration in, which aligns the RGB channels so they're relatively normalized. And then I add the SCNR, which takes whatever's remaining of that green cast, because there is a green bias both on your camera and in the atmosphere, which we can pull out. And then I just hit the auto stretch. And you can see how much nicer that looks. The stars aren't as
much better controlled.
Yeah. And of course, this is just a single frame, so I've got my dark hot pixels here, which will come out with darks. And if I stack all of these, it'll get rid of all of this fuzz. It'll be quite noiseless. And that won't be too bad, although this target is not really a hyperstar target. It's quite small. I should be doing this at the full focal length of the scope, or with a focal reducer at least, but not f2. That's too small.
You get both fit and the Omega Nebula in one frame.
Do you think so?
I don't know what your field of view is, but I've seen it done. I've seen others manage to get them both in.
Okay, that's interesting. I might give that a go. It's 540 millimeters, but yeah, that would be a good use of that field of view. Okay, how do I get out of this screen share? Okay, I think that's us pretty much done for the night, guys. So for anyone watching, and there are a few of you, thanks for sticking around, and feel free to join us anytime. Thank you, Kevin, for bringing the live Mars and Saturn. I hope you're not too cold there.
I am packing up as we speak, and I can't feel my fingers.
Yeah. All right, time for a wine, and yeah, thanks very much, guys. We'll see you next time.
Okay, thanks, Dylan. Thanks, Paul.